До слова запрошується речник Міністерства оборони України.
Now the floor is given to Ministry of Defense of Ukraine spokesman on ATO-related issues, Colonel Oleksandr Motuzyanyk. Good afternoon, everyone. Dear friends, now the information about the main events that happened in the ATO area during the last 24 hours. During the last 24 hours, the active military actions in Lugansk sector continued, especially in Krymsky village. There, the militants were active at 10 a.m. and until the late evening, shelled our positions with the use of heavy weapons. During the last 24 hours, the militants launched at Krymsky positions about 140 mines and 10 artillery shells, 152 mm caliber, and twice they shelled with the use of tanks. The intensity of fire increased in the morning and during the day and in the evening. And between these episodes, the enemy used small arms. In Popasnensky region, also there were 24-hour shellings delivered by the enemy, but heavy weapons was used rarely. But 30 mortar mines were launched at the positions of ADO. And the majority of ceasefire violations were in the suburbs of Popasna and were delivered with the use of small arms. In Stanitsa-Luganska region, right after midnight, the militants launched 10 mines at Caesar positions, and then after sunset, they used small arms to the direction of Stanitsa-Luganska. On the whole, disturbing fire lasted about 4 hours. On the whole, during the last 24 hours, there were 26 shellings delivered by the enemy in Lugansk sector, 10 with the use of heavy weapons. In the Donetsk sector, there were no calm areas. In Svetlodarsk Bulge, during dark hours, the enemy used actively heavy weapons, launching about 50 mines. And during the day, the enemy opened fire with the use of small arms, including sniper weapon, and used weaponry of APCs. In Gorlovka perimeter, the main area of military activity of the enemy still is northern suburbs of occupied Gorlovka. There, the occupants actively opened fire with the use of small arms and sporadically launched several mines each time to the direction of our positions. In Avdiivka and its suburbs, activity of the enemy remains high, and on the whole, during the last 24 hours, the militants shelled these positions of Ukrainian forces for about 14 hours. Each fourth episode of ceasefire violation was accompanied by mortar fire. In the region of the Donetsk airport, it was calmer than the previous day. Mortars were used less often, but armed provocation with the use of small arms continued. And on the whole, during the last 24 hours in the Donetsk sector, there were 30 enemy shellings, including 17 of those with the use of heavy weapons. The Mariupol sector, the theater of military actions remains the same. The militants shell along the front line. In Mariinsky region, Russian occupation forces delivered one mortar shelling in Mariinka and one in Krasnogorivka, and they supported it with the use of small arms. And civilian houses came under fire in Krasnogorovka. Lermontova Street suffered the most. It is in the south of the town. The roofs, the windows of the houses were damaged, and also household facilities were damaged, and one garage of the resident was ruined. And to the south, in the region of Dokuchaevsk, the enemy repeatedly opened fire with the use of APC's weaponry. And in the south of Mariupol sector, the situation is the most tense and remains the same. Starting midnight, the enemy delivered disturbing fire to the direction of our positions in Vodyane. And their efforts failed. And at 8 a.m., they opened fire with the use of 122 mm artillery. And during 1 hour, the enemy launched about 50 shells and didn't stop at that. And until the end of the day, the forces of the occupants used the weaponry of APCs and all the spectrum of small arms. and traditionally mortars of Russian occupation forces were used in Shirokino and Gnutovo. And about 10 p.m. they launched 7 shells at Ukrainian positions near Pavlovil. During the last 24 hours in the Mariupol sector, there were 29 enemy shellings recorded, 9 with use of heavy weapons. During the last 24 hours, in the result of the military actions, no Ukrainian serviceman was killed, but 5 were wounded. One more former militant from the suburbs of Slavyansk surrendered to law enforcers and took part in SBU program that is called They Wait For You Back Home. He voluntarily said that in spring 2014 he served at checkpoint of the enemy. The commander of the group of the militants, nicknamed Stary, provided him with a pistol and a baton for traffic control. And he searched the cars that left the town. That came to town. In mid-June, before our forces freed this town, he wanted to take his money, and he hid in his own home. And then he was without job, and he lived in fear of punishment for his actions. And lastly, 7-day training completed. These were the trainings of crews of armored vehicles of the National Guard. And in the course of training, they had 100-kilometer movement of military equipment. They checked driving skills. And also they had live fire exercises. And drivers rehearsed evacuation of military equipment from the battlefield. No questions. Thank you and goodbye.